Well, good Monday morning. Members will please come to the floor and take your seats. Members, please come to the floor. Members will please come to the floor and take your seats. The hour of convening having arrived, all members will please take their seats. Mr. Clerk, will you ring the bell? We're going to have the morning roll call. All members present will please vote green to signify their presence in the chamber. And Mr. Clerk, will you unlock the machines? Have all members voted? We got you. Members, let me give you a heads up. We're getting ready to hear from the chaplain of the day, but I'm going to ask you, after the chaplain completes his message to us and we pledge the flag, I'm going to ask you, doorkeepers, to keep the doors closed. Not yet. I didn't ask you to do it yet. After the pastor brings this message, I'm going to ask you to, we pledge to keep the doors closed. We're going to have a brief video that I think we all will enjoy. It won't be long. And then we'll move on with the issues that are before us today. All members voted. If so, all members have now voted. Mr. Clerk, will you lock the machines? Doorkeepers, now, will you please close the doors and keep them closed? We will begin our day with, as is our custom, with scripture reading and prayer by the chaplain, after which we will pledge allegiance to the flag of our country. Now we have a pinch hitter introducing, and y'all, it's football season, I get it, it was, but we have a pinch hitter, that's baseball season. We have a pinch hitter introducing the chaplain of the day, the lady from the 88, well, you're from the 88, Representative Rhonda Taylor was supposed to, has invited our chaplain. I think Chairman Mitchell will probably allude to that, and she's having some throat issues, some voice issues, so we're going to allow Chairman Billy Mitchell to introduce the chaplain of the day. Chairman Mitchell.
First of all, please be seated. You honor me with this standing ovation. Our chaplain of the day is the presiding prelate of the 6th Episcopal District of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which encompasses over 500 churches throughout the state of Georgia, chances are that each and every single one of you have at least one AME church in or near your district. Before being appointed bishop, he was the pastor of the St. Matthew AME Church in Orange, New Jersey, where he grew the congregation from 75 members to more than 2,800 members. Now, I often feel you can really gain insight about someone's background by seeing what motivates them to transform from a mere consumer of issues and policy to an advocate for change. Well, this former school board chair, County College Board of Trustees chair, board member of the largest healthcare system in New Jersey, from the most influential list in New Jersey, now to the most influential list in Georgia, who has received 5 pins from 4 different governors, including our very own Governor Kemp, to sign legislation Bishop has advocated for its passage. After the choir sings, the next, I'm sorry, Speaker, force of habit. The next voice you'll hear is that of Bishop Reginald Jackson.
Speaker Burns and members of the House of Representatives, my delight and joy to be with you today. And I want you to know you are moving up on my prayer list because you all have to put up with Billy Mitchell. Happy to have all of the AMEs who are here today, and thank you so much for coming. In Matthew's Gospel, the 6th chapter and the 10th verse, we call this section the Lord's Prayer. And everybody knows the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer is one of those passages that we know by heart. But in that prayer, Jesus says some words which I think are extremely important. These are words which help govern, shape, and define my ministry, and it's my prayer and hope that it will help define and shape your service to the state of Georgia. Listen to what he says. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. These words are often overlooked and insignificant when we read or say the Lord's Prayer. We face a difficult and challenging time in our nation and in our state. Our people are polarized, our government is divided, and we need to find one common thing which will bring our people together, prayerfully unite our government, and help us to improve our state and our nation. And I believe that common theme is found in Jesus' words in the Lord's Prayer. Your kingdom come, your will be done. Imagine how much more we can accomplish if all of us have our minds centered on trying to bring about God's kingdom on earth. And I am aware that there are those who say that is idealistic, that it cannot be done. But that does not excuse us from the responsibility from seeking to make it real. My brothers and sisters, I hope that whatever legislation you propose, whatever legislation you vote on, that it would have this one common theme. Is this God's will? God who is not a respecter of person. God who loves us all. wouldn't it be wonderful if the one thing that could bring us together would seek for us to try to bring about God's kingdom on earth? As the Old Testament prophets described it, when men beat their swords in the plowshares and study war no more. When we come and when we reason together, when we have a common goal of doing God's will on earth. And there is a school of theological thought which I believe is errant and inappropriate and not biblically sound. But there are those who say that the scriptures don't speak the issues of government and justice. But that simply means you haven't read the scriptures well. Listen to what the word says in the Old Testament. He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, except to do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. For those of us who go to church, who worship every Sunday, and I know that's all of us, I have no doubt. I'm sure yesterday morning everybody was worshiping somewhere. But there's a passage in Amos which really, I think, calls us to task. Those of us who gather and go through worship. It's an indictment on our failure to worship but not serve. Listen to what it says. I despise your feast days. I have no regard for your solemn assemblies. Though you offer me grain offerings, I will not accept them. Take away from me the noise of your choirs, and the melodies of your stringed instruments I will not hear. But let justice run down like water, and righteousness like a mighty stream. We must not only praise God, but we must also serve God. We, in our own prayer time, must seek God's will and God's direction. It is my prayer that all of us will have a desire for God's kingdom to come on earth as it is in heaven. I assure you, if we don't get it right down here, we won't have a chance to get it right up there. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Will you stand and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Let us pray. Our Father and God, we thank you for the blessing of this day. This is the day that you have made. Help us to rejoice and be glad in it. Remind us that with this day comes opportunity and responsibility. Help us to seize the opportunity which is before us to make this a better state, a better nation in which to live. And remind us that we are responsible for the opportunity you have provided us to please you. Lord, bless us individually, then bless us collectively. Bless the Speaker of this House as he provides leadership. Bless the Lieutenant Governor, the President of the Senate, as he presides over that chamber. Bless our governor, who carries the awesome responsibility for leadership of this state. Remind us that everything rises or falls on leadership. Now forgive us of our sins. Continue to shower us with your grace. And may your mercy continue to bless us daily. In your name we ask it all. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to stop right there and take a picture.
Oh, I'd be delighted to.
Thank you, Bishop Jackson, for that message. And thank you for many, many churches in our state. The AME churches are a powerful force. Thank you for your leadership there. Doorkeepers, you may unlock the doors, but I'm going to ask members to stay seated in the chamber just for a moment as we tee up a video. Important day, y'all. We're celebrating something today. There are a couple of you who were around and knew General James Oberthorpe by his first name, James Al Williams. We know you were there. Representative Williams, and called him by his first name. He was a good man. Is that what you said? So we all know that this great state was settled by General Oberthorpe in Savannah in 1733. So we're going to have a nice video as we celebrate Georgia Day, so important day in our history. We have a quick video.
Each year, the Georgia Historical Society recognizes Georgia Day, the anniversary of the founding of the Georgia colony, as part of the Georgia History Festival. The Georgia Historical Society is the statewide educational and research institution responsible for collecting, examining, and teaching Georgia and American history. The Georgia History Festival is GHS's signature educational program, featuring a variety of public programs, exhibits, in-school events, teacher training, and classroom resources that help bring history to life for students of all ages.
Thank you, members. The Georgia Historical Society does an outstanding job of cataloging the history of our state, all over our state. So thank them for that video, and I hope we all enjoy this great Georgia Day. You may greet the pastor in the South Ante room. He's making his way out there, so you can go out and greet the bishop. We appreciate him being here. So, I don't know if I can. So, our doctor of the day is brought to us by Representative Derek McCullum, and it's of the 30th, and the doctor of the day is Dr. Jody Monmiller Brazil. I probably didn't do very well with that name, but we certainly appreciate the service of our doctor of the day. So if you need the doctor of the day, they're downstairs. Take advantage of their services. Chairman Tarvin, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits, is recognized. Chairman Tarvin.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Information and Audits has read the journal from the previous legislative day and found it to be correct. And something to think about, whatever the human mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve.
That's profound there, Mr. Chairman, and I think we've seen that in the history of our country We are a country that achieves much with great technological advances that benefit us all. Chairman Tarvin, the chair on the Committee on Information and Audits, reports that the journal of the previous legislative day has been read and found to be correct. Is there any objection to dispense with the reading of the journal? Chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there any objection to the confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. Mr. Clerk, will you read the resolution establishing the order of business for the day?
Representative, illustration of the 104th moves following be established as the order of business during the first part of the period, unanimous consents. Introduction of bills and resolutions, first reading and reference of House bills and resolutions, second reading of bills and resolutions, reports of standing committees, third reading and passage of uncontested local bills and resolutions, morning orders.
Is there an objection to the adoption of the resolution establishing the order of business for the day? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted.
Yes.
First reading of bills and resolutions, the clerk will read.
House Bill 1218 by Representative Leverett of the 123rd, Wade of the 9th, Gunther of the 8th, Oliver the 82nd, Evans the 57th. Bill be titled Act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 5 of Title 53 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to general provisions relative to probate.
Judiciary.
House Bill 1219 by Representative Silcox of the 53rd, Stevens of the 164th, Holland of the 54th. Bill be titled Act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 4, Title 32 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to general provisions relative to state, county, and municipal road systems.
Public Safety and Homeland Security.
House Bill 1220 by Representative Rhodes of the 124th, Williams of the 148th, Corbett of the 174th, Jones of the 25th, Houston of the 170th, and others. A bill being titled Act to amend Article 2, Chapter 2, Title 46 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to jurisdiction, powers, and duties.
Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications.
House Bill 1221 by Representative Smith of the 18th, Cox of the 28th, Franklin of the 160th, Wiedauer of the 121st, and McDonald of the 26th. Bill be titled Act to amend Code Section 22-293 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to student attending school system and other system other than the student's residence.
Education.
House Bill 1222 by Representative Tran of the 80th, Howe of the 50th, Park of the 107th, Hong of the 103rd, Byrd of the 20th. Bill be titled Act to amend Chapter 4, Title 1 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to holidays and observances.
Special Rules. House
Bill 1223 by Representative Leverett of the 123rd, Petrie of the 166th, Prince of the 132nd, Jackson of the 128th, Adesanya of the 43rd. Bill be titled Act to amend Article 3, Chapter 12 of Title 2 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, the Georgia Soil Amendment Act of 1976.
Agriculture and Consumer Affairs.
House Bill 1224 by Representative Fleming of the 114th, Scoggins of the 14th, Dempsey the 13th, Mathiak of the 74th, Dickey the 145th, and others. Bill be titled Act to amend Subpart 5 of Part 3 of Article 7 of Chapter 3, Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to tuition equalization grants.
Higher Education.
House Bill 1225 by Representative Martin of the 49th, Jones of the 25th, Hilton of the 48th. Bill be titled Act to amend Article 2, Chapter 8, Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to joint county and municipal sales and use taxes.
Ways and Means.
House Bill 1226 by Representative Hilton of the 48th, Townsend of the 179th, Mathis of the 149th, Jones of the 25th, Ridley of the 22nd, and others. Bill be titled Act to amend Subpart 2, Part 1 of Article 16 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to compulsory attendance.
Education.
House Bill 1227 by Representative Thomas of the 65th. Bill be titled Act to amend Article 2, Chapter 7, Title 16 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to criminal trespass and damage to property.
Judiciary.
House Bill 1228 by Representative Smith of the 18th. Bill be titled Act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 91, Title 36 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to general provisions for public works bidding.
Governmental Affairs.
House Resolution 1067 by Representative Chastain of the 7th, Burns of the 159th, Ridley the 6th, Hatchett of the 155th, Jaspers of the 11th, and others. A resolution honoring the life of Mr. Mike Gibbs and dedicating a road in his memory.
Transportation.
House Resolution 1083 by Representative Gamble of the 15th, Gullett of the 19th, Jones of the 25th, Townsend of the 179th, Dubnik of the 29th, and others. A resolution creating the House Study Committee on Science, Technology, and Engineering.
Education.
That completes first readers.
Second reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 853 by Representative Bell of the 75th, Ridley of the 22nd, Clark of the 100th, Miller of the 62nd, Glaze of the 67th, and others. A bill relating to education. House Bill 854 by Representative Bell of the 75th, Burnell of the 77th, Jackson of the 165th, Paris of the 142nd, Jackson of the 128th. A bill relating to general provisions relative to foreclosure. House Bill 1188 by Representative Lott of the 131st, Powell of the 33rd, Hitchens of the 161st, Collins of the 71st, Vance of the 133rd. A bill relating to employment and training of peace officers. House Bill 1189 by Representative Taylor of the 173rd, Cannon of the 172nd, LaHood of the 175th. A bill to amend an act providing a new charter for the city of Barwick. House Bill 1190 by Representative Collins of the 71st, Powell of the 33rd, Chokas of the 151st, Gaines of the 120th, and Ridley of the 6th. A bill relating to professions and businesses. House Bill 1191 by Representative Park of the 107th, McGall of the 105th, Clark of the 108th, Alv of the 50th, Draper of the 90th, and others. A bill relating to government transparency and campaign finance. House Bill 1192 by Representative Carson of the 46th, Martin of the 49th, Blackman of the 146th. A bill relating to exemptions from sales and use tax. House Bill 1193 by Representative McDonald of the 26th, Hitchens of the 161st, Lumpson of the 12th, Hong of the 103rd, and Collins of the 71st. A bill relating to motor vehicles and traffic. House Bill 1194 by Representative Dubnik of the 29th, Hilton of the 48th, Ballard of the 147th, Hagan of the 156th, Chokas of the 151st, and others. A bill relating to a student attending school in system other than system of students' residence. House Bill 1195 by Representative Kendrick of the 95th, Jackson of the 128th, Kelly of the 16th, Green of the 154th, Buckner of the 137th, and others. A bill relating to the imposition rate, computation, exemptions, and credits relative to income taxes. House Bill 1196 by Representative Evans of the 89th, Drenner of the 85th, Stoner of the 40th, Hutchinson of the 106th, Buckner of the 137th, and others. A bill relating to public utilities, public transportation. House Bill 1197 by Representative Houston of the 170th, Powell of the 33rd, Green of the 154th, Jackson of the 128th, Perkle of the 169th, and others. A bill relating to imposition rate, computation, exemptions, credits relative to income taxes. House Bill 1198 by Representative Bazemore of the 69th, Bennett of the 94th, Beverly of the 143rd, Jones of the 25th, Carter of the 93rd, and others. A bill relating to elementary and secondary education. House Bill 1199 by Representative Perkle of the 169th, Green of the 154th, Jackson of the 128th, Corbett of the 174th, and Jackson of the Jaspers of the 11th. A bill relating to maintenance of statistics of architectural and engineering firms doing business with the state and ineligibility of firms. House Bill 1200 by Representative McCollum of the 30th, Powell of the 33rd, Corbett of the 174th, Ridley of the 6th, Jaspers of the 11th. A bill relating to restoration of license to persons completing defensive driving course or alcohol or drug program. House Bill 1201 by Representative Gaines of the 120th, Smith of the 18th, Jones of the 47th, Silcox of the 53rd, Hong of the 103rd, and others. A bill relating to vacating of sentence for trafficking victim defendants and review of individuals' criminal history record information, definitions, privacy considerations, written application, requesting review, and inspection. House Bill 1202 by Representative Reese of the 140th, Hughley of the 141st, Smith of the 138th, and Buckner of the 137th. A bill relating to redevelopment powers. House Bill 1203 by Representative Kelly of the 16th, Silcox of the 53rd, Jones of the 25th, Reeves of the 99th, Roberts of the 52nd, and others. A bill relating to dispossessory proceedings. House Bill 1204 by Representative Lumsden of the 12th, Hawkins of the 27th, Cooper of the 45th, Silcox of the 53rd, Taylor of the 173rd. A bill relating to insurance. House Bill 1205 by Representative Jones of the 25th, Chet Williams of the 148th, Cox of the 28th, Ridley of the 6th, Cannon of the 172nd, and others. A bill relating to deceptive or unfair practices. House Bill 1206 by Representative Lumsden of the 12th, Carson of the 46th, Gullett of the 19th, Gunter of the 8th, Scoggins of the 14th. A bill relating to unfair or deceptive practice in consumer transactions that are deemed unlawful. House Bill 1207 by Representative Fleming of the 114th, Petrie of the 166th, Washburn of the 144th, Silcox of the 53rd, and Cooper of the 45th. A bill relating to elections and primaries. House Bill 1208 by Representative Schofield of the 63rd, Beverly of the 143rd, Clark of the 108th, Hughley of the 141st, Burnell of the 77th, and others. A bill relating to housing generally, general provisions regarding education, general provisions regarding labor, industrial relations, labor practices relative to public officers and employees. House Bill 1209 by Representative Clark of the 100th, Reeves of the 99th, Kelly of the 16th, Jones of the 25th, Daniel of the 117th, and others. A bill relating to dependency proceedings. House Bill 1210 by Representative Lim of the 98th, Crow of the 118th, Wilkerson of the 38th, Maynard of the 56th, Fry of the 122nd. A bill relating to general provisions Department of Community Affairs. House Bill 1211 by Representative Fry of the 122nd, Park of the 107th, Cannon of the 58th, McLean of the 109th, Hawley of the 116th. A bill relating to labor practices of public officers and employees. House Bill 1212 by Representative Glaze of the 67th, Mitchell of the 88th, New of the 64th, Gladney of the 130th, Roberts of the 52nd. A bill relating to Georgia State Employees' Pension and Savings. House Bill 1213 by Representative Glaze of the 67th, Townsend of the 179th, Gladney of the 130th, Mitchell of the 88th, Roberts of the 52nd. A bill relating to employees' insurance and benefits plan for public officers and state employees. House Bill 1214 by Representative Neal of the 79th, Werkheiser of the 157th, Miller of the 62nd. A bill relating to procedure for sentencing and imposition of punishment and grants of pardons, paroles, and other relief. House Bill 1215 by Representative Cannon of the 58th, Bazemore of the 69th, Miller of the 62nd, Davis of the 87th, Owl of the 50th, and others. A bill relating to the Department of Public Health. House Bill 1216 by Representative Cannon of the 58th, a bill relating to medical assistance. House Bill 1217 by Representative Neal of the 79th, Douglas of the 78th, Hawley of the 116th, Bell of the 75th. A bill to restrict and limit the powers of Clayton County to deny county services to a resident of such county on basis of any private debts owed by the resident to another private party. House Resolution 1040 by Representative Gullett of the 19th, Kelly of the 16th, New of the 64th, Montana of the 17th, and Smith of the 18th. A resolution honoring the life of Mr. Samuel Thomas Clark and dedicating a road in his memory. House Resolution 1041 by Representative Washburn of the 144th, Powell of the 33rd, Cox of the 28th, Stevens of the 164th, McCollum of the 30th, and others. A resolution proposing amendment to the Constitution so as to provide that the governing authority of any county or consolidated government shall be authorized to adopt an alternative method of appraisal and assessment of real property located within such county for taxation. House Resolution 1042 by Representative Leverett of the 123rd, Demonstration of the 104th, Gunter of the 8th, Smith of the 18th, Reeves of the 99th, and others. A resolution creating the Joint Study Committee on Judicial System Compensation. House Resolution 1043 by Representative Hilton of the 48th, Daniel of the 117th, Vance of the 133rd, McCollum of the 30th, Camp of the 135th, and others. A resolution applying to the United States Congress to call a convention under Article 5 of the Constitution of the United States limited to proposing amendment to the Constitution to set a limit on the number of terms that a person may be elected as a member of the United States House of Representatives and to set a limit on the number of terms that a person may be elected as a member of the United States Senate. House Resolution 1066 by Montana of the 17th, Sains of the 180th, Hilton of the 48th, Gullett of the 19th, Thomas of the 21st, and others. A resolution expressing support for the Iranian people's desire for a democratic, secular, non-nuclear Republic of Iran, condemning violations of human rights and state-sponsored terrorism by the Iranian government. Senate Bill 205 by Senator Williams of the 25th, Robertson of the 29th, Anderson of the 24th, Hickman of the 4th, Albers of the 56th, and others. A bill relating to licenses for funeral directors and embalmers. Senate Bill 362 by Senator Hodges of the 3rd, Still of the 48th, Summers of the 13th, Eccles of the 49th, Robertson of the 29th, and others. A bill relating to state government. Senate Bill 406 by Senator Dixon of the 45th, Robertson of the 29th, Anna Duarte of the 31st, Brass of the 28th, Albers of the 56th, and others. A bill relating to statewide first responder building mapping information system. Senate Bill 410 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd, Walker of the 3rd of the 20th, Robertson of the 29th, Payne of the 54th, Anna Duarte of the 31st, and others. A bill relating to licensing of veterinarians and veterinary technicians generally, through second readers.
Members, if I can get your attention, please. Now, sure, I love each and every one of you in this house, but one of the best and one of my favorite House members ever, Pam Dickerson, Representative Pam Dickerson is here, after 49 years with Delta. 49 years. She's the best. Reports of standing committees, the clerk will read.
Representative Carpenter, the 4th District Chairman of the Committee on Creative Arts and Entertainment, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Creative Arts and Entertainment has had under its consideration the following bill of the House, instructed me to report the same back to the House. Following recommendation, House Bill 549 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative Carpenter, the 4th District Chairman. Representative Beth Camp, the 135th District Chairman of the Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination Local, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination and Locals had under its consideration following bills of the House, instructed me to report the same back to the House with following recommendations. House Bill 1135 do pass. House Bill 1174 do pass. House Bill 1025 do pass by substitute. House Bill 1140 do pass. House Bill 1141 do pass. House Bill 1143 do pass. House Bill 1145 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative Beth Camp of the 135th District, Chairman. Representative Jay Collins, the 71st District, Chairman of the Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security has had under its consideration the following bill of the House, instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Resolution 1019 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative Jay Collins, the 71st District, Chairman. That completes the reading of the reports of standing committees.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. If members will come to the floor and take your seats, we do have a local calendar. A local calendar. We have 5 bills on the local calendar that relate to homestead exemption, and as we all know it, they require a 2/3 roll call vote for passage. Mr. Clerk, will you read the local calendar? Well, Mr. Clerk, I'm going to get this exactly right. Third reading and passage of uncontested local bills. If there is no objection, we will vote on the local calendar as a whole with a recorded vote. Hearing none, is so ordered. Now, Mr. Clerk, will you read the local calendar?
House Bill 1135 by Representative Hatchett of the 155th Town of Dexter. House Bill 1174 by Representative Smith of the 138th Harris County. House Bill 1025 by substitute by Representative Ridley of the 22nd Cherokee County. House Bill 1140 by Representative Smith of the 18th Haralson County. House Bill 1141 by Representative Hagan of the 156th Telfair County. House Bill 1135 by Representative Hagan of the 156th Telfair County. House Bill 1145 by Representative Scoggins of the 14th Bartow County.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on the local calendar? Chair has none. The previous question is ordered. Is there an objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bills? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall these bills now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bills on the local calendar will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And Mr. Clerk, will you unlock the machines? Have all members voted? All members voted. Let me get in there. If so, Mr. Clerk, will you lock the machines? On the passage of the local calendar, the yeas are 158, the nays are 0. These bills, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. For what purposes, Chair Lady Camp, rise?
To make a motion.
State your motion.
I'd like to make a motion to immediately transmit the local calendar to the Senate.
Representative Camp moves that the local calendar be immediately transmitted to the Senate. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. We'll move on to morning orders. I know we have a lot of groups in the gallery, so we have a whole slew of morning orders. So members, you will have 1 minute to present your morning order, 1 minute, and I hope you'll abide by the light system. We'll begin with Representative Debbie Buckner for a morning order. Representative Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, in February, is Cancer Prevention Month, and today we have some visitors from Georgia Core and the not just West Central, all of the regional coalitions. But I want to take a minute, and I'm going to talk fast. Cancer continues to be the second leading cause of death in Georgia, and the American Cancer Society estimates that more than 60,000 Georgians will be diagnosed each year with cancer. If you have a family history of cancer, or if you are over the age of 40, you need to have a conversation with your medical care provider about ways that you can be screened for breast, lung, colon, cervical, whatever kind of cancer, and make sure that you are taken care of early, because many of the cancers, there's no prevention other than early detection. I want to give a short shout out to a couple of people that are very meaningful in my life, and one is a doctor in Columbus who is unique. She is Dr. Cynthia Fernandez is an OBGYN, and Dr. John Catrone, who has an eagle eye to find things as a diagnostic radiologist, and Dr. Grant Carlson, who did the first removal of tumor and reconstruction here in Atlanta. These people, along with CORE, do a great job for us. And I see the red light, but I do want to do the thing I came to do, and that is invite you at 1 o'clock to the South Steps to meet some of these providers and learn more about cancer prevention. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Buckner, we do have some very important announcements today of morning orders. None more important than that one. Thank you for all of those here that help us with cancer prevention. Representative Bennett, Representative Hughley, Representative Kendrick, Representative Willis. Oh boy, we got a good one coming on here, y'all. Give them a minute to get to the well to join you. Oh, well, y'all want to wait a minute? Okay, we can do that. Representative Hughley, you want to do, your other one's not here either? Well, you can wait if you want to. Okay. It is Georgia Day, what can I say? Representative Rhonda Taylor is recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a quick shout out to those AMEs. I think they've transitioned to their room, but just to let you know that at 12:40 on the South Wing steps, we will be taking a picture and doing a press conference. All is invited. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Henderson is recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is Cancer Prevention Day at the Capitol. I'd like my colleagues to join me. If you're dressed in pink or not, you're welcome to come up. We're all in this together. A resolution for Dr. Jan Jackson. Would you please stand, Dr. Jackson, Oncology Director, Wellstar Cobb Health System. Over a decade of radiation treatment. Thank you, Dr. Jackson, for your loyalty and your service in the field of oncology. We also have Dr. Makita Rayton, Oncology Clinical Manager, Grady Hospital. Let's give Dr. Makita a hand. She works diligently with Morehouse School of Medicine with prostate cancer, presenting survivors and even counseling them and spearheading them in the way of counseling in order for them to be better with early detection. Thank you, Dr. Rayton. CEO, East Georgia Cancer Coalition, Smitha Ahmed, 53 counties she's with. I know I've seen the red light. Tracy Tooks and her mom, Annette Tooks, Speak Life Cancer Care Ministry at New Birth Missionary Baptist Church with Dr. Jamal Bryan as pastor. And last but not least, thank God for my husband. Thank you, honey, for your support. Jerome Henderson. There is no cure for cancer, but we can beat it with early detection. Early detection saves lives. Early detection saved my life. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. God bless you, everyone.
Thank you, Representative Henderson. Thank y'all for being here, doctors, and thank you for what you do every day for Georgians and to extend our lives and give us a better life. We appreciate it. Representative Bennett, Representative Hughley, Representative Kendrick, Representative Willis, you're recognized for a morning order.
Where are they? Well, good morning, colleagues. This is the day I know you all have been waiting for. It is Alpha Kappa Alpha Day at the Capitol. I'm joined with my colleagues who are members of this esteemed sorority. We have with us today some very special guests. I'd like to recognize our current regional director, Ms. Tiffany Moore Russell, Esquire. Our former regional director, Mrs. Lucretia Payton Stewart. My next former regional director, Mrs. Carolyn House Randolph. And our second vice president, won't you stand and join us? This is a resolution recognizing Carolyn also, Mrs. Randolph, is also the international secretary to our esteemed organization, AKA. Stand up again, and we have our second vice president, and I want her to stand once again. She's an international officer. Okay, Mr. Speaker, thank you so much, and we will continue to recognize the sorors in the gallery. Won't you please stand? We've got over 200 people here with us today. They are spread between the Senate and the House. And we have 10,000 members in Georgia. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you and welcome to the People's House. Glad to have you. Representative Park Cannon, Representative Tanya Miller, Representative Nulowitz, and Representative Barnes. If you hold just for a moment. Members will please take seats and give the member in the wheel your attention. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members. Today, this Monday morning, we're coming to just ask for a moment of silence for one of our Georgians who passed away. Her name is Sarah Lynn McFather. Her family is here in the gallery. Her beautiful son, Ben, is here. Her loving husband, Danny, is here. And both the parents are here as well. She passed away from cancer, and on a day like today, we're just super grateful that her family would come by to spend some time. Her life was spent well here in the state of Georgia. She was a longtime member of the Junior League of Atlanta, and she volunteered countless hours at the Atlanta Community Food Bank, issues that are dear to District 58. So we just want to ask for a moment of silence to let her know that we're caring about her and thinking about her today. Thank you, and I yield the well.
Thank you, Representative Cannon. And to the family, thank you for being with us, and our prayers go out to you, and thank you for the contribution of a great Georgian. Thank you. Chairman Wiedauer, Representative Gaines recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we rise to honor the 2023 GSHA. So stand up, stand up. I see you up there. Prince Avenue Christian. Last week we celebrated women in sports, and I think it's very appropriate that they brought home the first women's state championship to the school in school's history. And we wanted to congratulate you for that incredible accomplishment and incredible record of 39-1. Thank you guys for being here. Softball. Thank you guys.
Congratulations. Good to have you, ladies. What a season. What a season. Chair Lady Mathiak is recognized for, and Chairman Knight for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning. Today, Chairman Knight and I get to welcome a very dear friend of ours, Zion Wilson from Spalding High School, and his administrator from Spalding High, that is the faculty member for the Spalding High School Family and Career Leadership Association. We are so proud to have y'all here today. Thank you for being here, and thank you, Ms. Shelley Worley, for all you do for those students at Spalding High School. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you for what you do, and welcome to the Capitol. Representative Al is recognized. You have anybody with you, or you got it by yourself?
No, just me.
Lady has it by herself. This is a good one, y'all. Listen up.
We have a lot of medical people here today. So today I'd like to commend and welcome the student anesthesiologist assistants with the Georgia Association of Anesthesiologist Assistants. Pronunciation. So good. Welcome to the People's House. Thank you for all you do on behalf of our patients, and if you could please stand to be acknowledged. They're here.
Thank you all for what you do. You're a great profession. We have some members here where they speak and put you to sleep too. I can assure you of that. I've heard them. Chair Lady Silcox is recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is Transit Day also at the Georgia Capitol. Representatives from all our transit agencies are here. You may have received this flyer last Friday, and the theme for this year is the year of rapid expansion, since MARTA is rolling out many of its bus rapid transit lanes in preparation for the 8 World Cup games that we're going to host in Atlanta in 2026. So try to stop by room 2016 between 10 and 12 to visit with folks from MARTA, Augusta, Gwinnett, Cobb, and others. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Reese is recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on this day, February the 12th, 1909, the nation's largest and most widely recognized civil rights organization was born, and that is the NAACP. Today is NAACP Capitol Day at the Capitol, and I just want to remind us that some 60 members were called to start this organization, 7 of whom were African American: W.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, and Mary Church Terrell, just to speak of a few. But today we do have with us the state president of the NAACP, Attorney Gerald Griggs, in the gallery with us. Mr. Griggs, if you will, please rise so we can give you a round of applause. Thank you for what you do for the state of Georgia.
Thank you. Welcome to the People's House. Good to have you. Chair Lady Dempsey is recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, members. Today in our gallery, we are joined by Together Georgia. They are not only visiting us, but will be visiting many of you too in your offices and as you pass through the halls today. Just as their name states, Together Georgia serves as a unified voice for Georgia's vulnerable children and their families. They are located statewide and serve as a leader in Georgia's child and family welfare policy making. Their engaged network provides family preservation and support programs, education programs, psychiatric residential treatment facilities, adoption and maternity homes, family foster care, therapeutic foster care, community group homes, emergency care, outdoor therapeutic programs, and independent living and aftercare programs for children and youth aging out of our state system. They are no doubt very busy. Please join me in recognizing Together Georgia, its staff, provider partners, and volunteers. I stand with you with a grateful heart for your past, present, and future work on behalf of our most vulnerable children, youth, and their families. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. We appreciate y'all being here. Chairman Petrie, Representative Franklin, Whip Burchett, recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my honor.
Let's get Representative Franklin up there. Yes, sir.
And we're waiting on Chairman Stevens, I believe, is preoccupied, but he should be here as well. it is my honor to recognize, y'all stand up, guys, members of the Richmond Hill High School, along with our Richmond Hill mayor, Russ Carpenter, are here today. And I want y'all to know something, guys. There is only one member of this body that is a graduate of Richmond Hill High School, a Wildcat, and that is Mr. Whip here, Burchett. Thank y'all for being here today.
Mayor, you have a great community there. Richmond Hill's got a lot of wonderful things going on. And thanks for bringing these young people to be with us. And welcome to the People's House. Glad to have y'all. Representative Martinez and Representative Fleming.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. It's a great day in Georgia. It's a great day, especially in the great city of Loganville. Any volleyball fans in the house? Yes, we do. Mr. Speaker, I want to recognize the Loganville Christian Academy varsity volleyball team, girls, the girls team that won the 2023 Georgia Independent Athletic Championship. Welcome to the house. With a record of 41-2. And it's made up with an all-star lineup of Emerson Diaz, Ella Morris, Maida Husband, and Sydney Stewart up there in the gallery. Also the GAA Player of the Year, Co-Player of the Year, Miss Emma Murphy. Join me in wishing them the best. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah.
Hey, that's strong. Thank y'all. Congratulations. Thanks for being here. Thank you, Representative. Representative Hughley. Representative Hughley is recognized. Are you going to bring someone with you?
Yes, Representative Buckner and Reese.
Representative Buckner and Reese.
And
would you
Smith.
join Representative Hughley down in the well? Representative Teddy Reese. He's MIA right now.
Already got a red light, okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. Today is Columbus Day at the Capitol. And we're having a group from Columbus that's going to be with us today. And in your offices, you will find a special Coke that says, "Thank you from Columbus." So on behalf of the people of Columbus, Georgia, we thank you for the work that you do. And we remind you that the formula for Coke was founded in Columbus, Georgia. So thank you so much. I have one other group, Mr. Speaker. They're for some reason the children can't get in, but we have young people from Reese Road Leadership Academy with us today. And Reese Road Leadership Academy is where we train young leaders on the 7 habits of a successful leader. And so they are delighted to be here at the Capitol. So if you see them in red, say hello, and thank you so much for allowing us to be here today.
Thank you. Did you say that Coke was formulated in Columbus? I didn't ask you. I asked her. I didn't know that. Did you know that, Representative Williams? Did you know that? I didn't know that. Well, we have one more. I've been saving the best to last. It's the most interesting combination that's coming to the well. So Representative Hagan and Representative Williams are recognized for morning on. I can't wait.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I have got a couple of special people from Lions that are here. Jonathan and Ashley Gordy are still up there by themselves in the up here. They're here because their son Noah is a page, but Representative Williams and I wanted to acknowledge them because Jonathan is the director of the Southeast Georgia Soapbox Derby, and his wife Ashley is a volunteer.
Would y'all hold just a minute? This is important.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I knew. Can I send somebody in the room and bring them out here? But thank you all, and I'm announcing my intention to race Lisa for Southeastern Georgia America Championship. She has no chance, but we'll do the best she can.
I accept your challenge and feel confident about my odds.
So you guys are going to race?
We actually raced last year, Mr. Speaker, and I don't think Representative Williams wants me to share the results of that race at this time.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Williams, I appreciate you being a gentleman. Ladies first, right? No doubt about it. You didn't have a chance. That completes our morning orders. I have a morning order. I want to recognize my clerk, Jason Bragg, who's up in the gallery. Good to have you, sir. And all the clerks that are in the building today, they provide a great, essential, have a responsibility to all of us and make sure our court system works efficiently and stays on time and gets the work done. So thank y'all for being here. We appreciate y'all all. Okay, we're moving on to the rules calendar. We'll move on to the rules calendar. The clerk will read the caption to HB 1033-1033.
House Bill 1033 by Representative Leverett of the 123rd and others to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 5 of Title 16 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia Annotated relating to crimes against the person so as to provide for protections for utility workers. This bill having referred to the Committee on Judiciary Non-Civil, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chairman Leverett is recognized to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, it's my pleasure today to present to you House Bill 1033. This is the Utility Worker Protection Act. You may recall from last year, this act follows up a bill we passed last year to protect our state's critical infrastructure. That was HB 227, which this body passed by an overwhelming margin. That bill protected the infrastructure, the machinery and equipment that is essential to providing the utility services that we all depend upon so much. This bill protects the men and women who maintain and keep up that infrastructure. And this is not just intended to fight some possible future anticipated evil. This is something that's happening right now as we speak and has been happening. Acts of violence against utility workers are becoming more commonplace. We heard testimony in committee about a line worker who was dragged in his car for about 100 yards. We heard testimony from a railroad engineer who was shot at while he was in a moving train. This kind of thing has been happening and it's continuing to happen, and we need to protect these folks who are so vital to our enjoying these various utility services that we depend upon so much. So this bill seeks to combat this evil by increasing the potential penalty for certain crimes if they are committed against a utility worker who is in the course or scope of performing his duties at the time of the crime. It takes 4 selected crimes: simple assault, simple battery, aggravated assault, and aggravated battery, and increases the range, the potential range of penalties that the court can consider. So, for example, we take simple assault and simple battery. Those are currently misdemeanors generally. If, however, the crime is committed against a utility worker while performing their duties, this bill would propose that those crimes become a misdemeanor of a high and aggravated nature. So basically, we're going from a potential penalty of up to $1,000 and up to a year in jail to up to a year in jail and up to $5,000 as a fine. With respect to aggravated assault and aggravated battery, those are felonies. The current penalty is from 1 to 20 years. Under this bill, if that crime is committed against a utility worker who is performing their duties at the time, then the potential penalty would be 3 to 20 years. We believe this addresses a very immediate and imminent need. We need to protect our state's utility workers. We made some changes in committee to try to expand the scope of the workers that it would protect. And it is supported, I think you've got some letters on your desk today, is supported by quite a number of organizations, including the Georgia Chamber and the Transmission Associations. And we would ask that you favorably consider and vote for this bill to protect our state's utility workers who are working so hard for us every day. Mr. Speaker, I'll yield for questions.
There are no questions.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask your favorable consideration of House Bill 1033.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas were 161, the nays were 0. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 461. House Bill 461.
House Bill 461 by Representative Thomas, the 21st, and others to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 13 of Title 48 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions regarding specific business and occupational taxes, so as required that the proceeds of local government regulatory fees be used to be paid for regulatory activities. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
The chair recognizes Representative Thomas to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I rise to present House Bill 461, LC number 500693S. This bill basically sets up so that regulatory fees are so we don't charge extra or try to generate revenue off of regulatory fees. It does so on lines 23 through 25 by saying regulatory fees shall be used to fund such regulatory activity and not general operations of the local government. Additionally, it changes but modifies one of the 6 methods to calculate that by adding in lines 39 through 40 or for extensive renovation projects, and defines an extensive renovation project to be valued at $75,000 or more. Additionally, because of this change, it allowed us to get rid of the 6th method. That's the bill, and be happy to take questions.
There are no questions.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With that, I yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas were 163, the nays were 0. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 516. House Bill 516.
House Bill 516 by Representative Jaspers the 11th, Ballinger the 23rd, and others to be entitled an act to amend Article 4 of Chapter 2 of Title 32 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to exercise of power to contract by the Department of Transportation so as to increase the minimum amount for a public road construction or maintenance contract. This bill having referred to the Committee on Transportation. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative McCollum to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning. Today I have a bill, it's a DOT department bill. This bill raises the limits on quick response projects from $200,000 to $500,000 due to inflation over the past 10 years. Also, it updates the P3 statute to adjust the timing of the public hearing to earlier in the process and the GDOT board final approval. Lastly, it increases the modular homes from 80 to 84 feet so they can be transported, but it does not increase the weight. That's my bill. I'll stand for questions, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman has, you'll take questions?
A few, Mr. Speaker.
I know this is, you're new at this game being in the well, but you know you could have yielded the well, but since you didn't. The gentleman from the 6th to your right, Representative Ridley, Jason Ridley, has a question. He's recognized for a question.
My friend yielded for a question.
Yes, for you.
You said that you're increasing the length from 80 foot to 84 foot on mobile or modular homes?
Either one, mobile or modular home, whichever terminology you'd like to use.
Could you explain the difference?
Well, I think a mobile home and modular homes just constructed differently with the 2x4s and things like that.
So,
but to be honest, no, I couldn't.
okay. Father up question there, if you don't
You
mind.
don't have to yield.
I'll yield.
So, is an 80 foot what a regular person buys, and 84 foot's what you buy if you win the lottery? Is that the difference?
That sounds correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is that the way it is in your district?
We prefer single wides.
Touche. I think I don't think he has any more questions. But let's see. I know there's a gentleman here that knows a lot about this subject matter, and he's right in front of you. Whip Burchett, do you have a question?
Does the gentleman yield?
For my whip, I do.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing the bill. Waycross is having multiple modular home manufacturers. This is a very significant bill to us. Got one question. What is the effective date on this bill?
Oh, well, it'll take effect on July the 1st unless the governor does a bill signing personally for me.
He's just going to do a bill signing for you?
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying if he doesn't, it'll take effect on July the 1st.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you,
Mr. Whip, that's assuming it passes here first, I guess.
That's right. That is true.
Just checking. Now, I know this gentleman also understands a lot about length because he's not real tall, but he knows about length. Let's see. Chairman Corbett is recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
On line 103, it says all laws and parts of laws in conflict with this act is repealed. Can you tell me what we are repealing?
What we're repealing?
Yes.
Well, in committee, we went over this, so I'm hoping we already know what it's repealing.
Do you mean we all have to look at the tape of committee to figure out what we're repealing? Is that what you're saying, sir? Gentleman,
well, Mr. Speaker, if you say so.
I'm just trying to understand the bill is what I'm trying to do. Will you yield for another question?
I'll yield for one more, Mr. Speaker.
This will come from the, maybe this gentleman can help you on what was said in committee. Chairman Jasper is recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I do for you, Mr. Chairman.
You say that with reservation.
I should have listened to the speaker and yielded, but.
Well, I just had a question on your comments you made about the bill that we worked so hard on in committee. That we talked about the length of modular homes being increased 4 feet. Is that true?
From 80 to 84, yes.
Is that not true? And you also said it did not increase the weight of a modular home. Do you have some new law of physics that we're not aware of?
Well, the only thing I can think of, maybe they transform without appliances.
Ah.
That's the only thing I can think of.
Well, I do believe, I think in committee, to clarify, it would increase the weight, but it stayed way below the weight increase that
150.
we all worked on last year. Thank you for doing the work on the bill.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For that, I yield the will. I appreciate your consideration. Do pass.
Well, you did have a serious question, but you've yielded well. Good decision. Not that all those were not serious. So am I to understand this is the first time you've been to the well and presented the bill? Outstanding. You're not welcome back. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And Mr. Clerk, will you unlock the machine? I don't think it's going to make it, Chief. Have all members voted? All members voted. It is his first bill. All members voted. If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of the bill. House Bill 516, the yeas are 167, the nays are 2. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Congratulations. Mr. Clerk, will you read the caption to House Bill 977? 977.
House Bill 977 by Representative LaHood of the 175th and others to be entitled an act to amend chapter.
Please take your conversations to the ante room. Some of us are interested in hearing. Thank you, members. Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 977 to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2, Title 21 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to primaries and elections generally so as to expand the number of contests subject to risk-limiting audits. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Governmental Affairs, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Members, here's our posture. on the wisdom of the Rules Committees pursuant to Rule 33.3. Debate shall be limited to 1 hour on HB 977. There is a minority report on your desk, and we will hear from the author of the bill as he explains the bill, and then we'll see where the next step is as far as those that may like to speak to the bill. Chair recognizes Chairman LaHood to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. House Bill 977 is the result of a working group, an election integrity working group that the Speaker asked us to conduct over the summer and fall. And what this bill does, it increases transparency, accuracy, and accountability in our elections. And it allows us to move on from the status quo and dig in and expand the number of hand count verifications that we're doing. And so what the bill does is requires that the top of ballot race is audited, and then it also requires that a statewide race get audited. And the statewide race that will be audited will be decided by the governor, the lieutenant governor, the Speaker of the House, and the minority leader from each chamber. And the decision will need to be made by 11 a.m. on the Thursday following the election. And additionally, on line 66, the bill says that nothing in this code section shall prevent an additional election from being audited if the election superintendent deems that to be necessary. Mr. Speaker, that is a summary of the bill, and I'll be glad to take questions if there are any.
The gentleman has no questions.
All right, thank you, and I appreciate your favorable consideration. Yield the will.
Will Park weighs on the minority report. Is that correct, sir? We have no speakers on this proposition. Is there an objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there an objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? All members voted. If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas, House Bill 977, the yeas are 164, the nays are 3. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Members, I want to introduce someone to you. Many of you sitting in these seats recognize former Chairman Tom Rice, who's back visiting us. Let's give a big house welcome to Chairman Tom Rice, a great member of this House of Representatives. Mr. Clerk, will you read the caption of House Bill 809, 809?
House Bill 809 by Representative Paulo, 33rd, to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 28 of Title 43 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to occupational therapists, so as to authorize occupational therapists to perform dry needling as a physical agent modality if certain training and education requirements are met. This bill having referred to the Committee on Health, the committee recommends that this bill do pass.
The gentleman from up on the lake in Hartwell, Georgia, is recognized to present the bill. Chairman Alan Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. Today, this morning, I bring to you the Occupational Therapist Dry Needling Bill. It's a fairly simple bill. It just changes the scope of practice for occupational therapists. It allows them to do the procedure of dry needling. This is all currently being done by, of course, acupuncturists and physical therapists. Dry needling is that procedure where they use needles, or the little thin needles that some of us don't even like a needle, but you can get along with them. And it takes the knot side of muscles. It puts criteria in there for extended education, such as what the physical therapists go through. A footnote to that, they had been asked to their licensing board about doing this, and upon consultation with the Attorney General, the Attorney General said it needed to be legislatively changed, and that's what I bring to you today. And I would certainly appreciate your support for this bill.
You have no questions. That's unusual for you. Gentlemen, you're not recognized. You're done. The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? All members voted? If so, Mr. Clerk, will you lock the machine? On the passage of House Bill 809, the yeas are 164, the nays are 3. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Clerk, will you read the caption to House Bill 576?
House Bill 576 by Representative Gullett of the 19th and others to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 1 and Title 31 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions regarding health so as to prohibit certain health care providers and facilities from discriminating against potential organ transplant recipients. This bill having referred to the Committee on Health, that committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Representative Gullett is recognized to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, today I rise to present House Bill 576. Like many of you, I've witnessed firsthand the profound impact of our healthcare decisions on real lives. It's a responsibility that we carry with great care, and it brings me here today to present this bill. Representative Rick Williams, now Senator Rick Williams, passed legislation that some of you might remember. Gracie's Law, a landmark bill passed in 2020, has since played a crucial role in ensuring fairness in organ transplants for those with physical and mental disabilities. This bill seeks to expand upon the spirit of Gracie's Law by ensuring that COVID vaccination status is not a sole barrier to an organ transplant. Decisions especially in matters as critical as organ transplant, should be based on comprehensive assessments of an individual's risk and not solely focus on vaccination status. And that's exactly what this bill addresses. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to answer any questions.
You do have some questions. Representative Gamble, right out in front of you, has a question. Gentleman's recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I do, thank you.
Is it not true that in part of this legislation, a constituent of mine who is 74 years old and was on a kidney transplant list was taken off of that list purely because he had not had the COVID vaccine? He had some pre-existing conditions, and that's why he hadn't done it. And if this legislation passes, it will prevent that situation from happening and others as well.
Yes, that's right, and I really appreciate you telling us that story and telling me that story. That's really the nexus for this bill. As we have found out, the American Journal of Transplantation did a survey in 2022 of 141 unique transplant centers, and it showed about 36% of the centers reported implementing a vaccine mandate, and most often they cited administrative and legal considerations for their decision, not so much the well-being of the patient. So thank you for that question.
Gentleman yield for further question?
I do.
Representative Lisa Campbell, is recognized for a question to your left.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
I'm curious to know, in the current law, the broader context for organ transplant, are there other diseases that are considered when prioritization on organ transplant lists are compiled, and so would this carve out be exclusive for COVID only?
It's for the COVID only the COVID vaccination.
But there are other diseases that are currently allowed in consideration for prioritization of organ transplants, is that correct?
This bill only addresses the COVID vaccination. That's right.
If the gentleman will allow, I think I'm understanding that part. What I'm not clear on is, are there other diseases that are currently included in the consideration for priority of organ transplants?
I'm sure that there are. However, my bill addresses only the COVID vaccination status.
Okay, thank you.
And as a sole basis for the decision, not additional basis for the decision.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sure. I'll answer one more, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, to your right, Representative Chairman Martin has a question. Representative Martin.
Gentleman, yield for a question.
I do, my friend.
Isn't it true that I believe you got to my question with your last statement, but I think it's important that the body understand, you and I have had this discussion. Your bill deals strictly with someone being disqualified because of their vaccination status, right? Solely on the basis of that is what your bill prevents, right?
That's correct.
Doesn't have anything to do with whether you have an active case of a disease, any of that. Just specifically, they can't use the fact that you did or you did not take the COVID vaccine to eliminate you solely based on that from a transplant.
That's 100% right.
That's all the bill does. Is that not true? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Mr. Whip, I know you had a question. There are a couple of speakers opposed, so you may communicate that question to those speakers. We'll recognize Representative Al for a time to speak to her opposition to the bill. Representative, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I start my written remarks, I want everyone to take out their driver's license and check at the bottom. In the middle, it should indicate if you are an organ donor or not. If you are not, I encourage you to have that conversation with your family and consider changing that status. So I rise today to speak against HB 576, which is the latest in a long string of bills aimed at achieving these two wrong-minded goals. Number one, bills like this seek to legislate the practice of medicine without regard for best medical practices. Number two, bills like this seek to undermine confidence and trust in the COVID-19 vaccines, and in doing so weaken our confidence and trust in all vaccines. Let's start with the basics. So nationally, more than 100,000 people are currently waiting for life-saving organ transplants. That's why I had you check your driver's license. The number of people requiring organ transplants far outstrips the supply of available organ donors. This means that in allocating this incredibly scarce and vital resource, transplant teams seek to ensure that recipients present with, first, the most urgent need, second, the closest possible match, and third, with the best prospects for long-term survival. Every organ that's transplanted into one patient is an organ that cannot be transplanted into another equally sick or needy patient. Every day, 17 people in this country die waiting for an organ transplant. For these reasons of resource scarcity and optimization of outcomes, these are some of the conditions that may preclude patients from receiving an organ transplant. These include multi-system organ failure, persistent infection, current or recent cancer diagnosis, and serious cardiac disease, among some others. There are also, as we note, vaccine recommendations, not preclusions, but recommendations prior to solid organ transplant for a simple reason. Prevention against infection in organ transplant recipients is crucial because post-transplant patients are immunocompromised. Further, vaccination after transplant may not be as effective, again because of the suppression of the immune system that is necessary for receiving the organ transplant. Up on the board here, you don't have to read it, but, or you can, I can send it to you. This is a 2023 article from the journal Vaccines. Yes, there's a journal called Vaccines because doctors are fun. This reviews the research and gives recommendations, again, these are recommendations, not preclusions, on recommended vaccines prior to certain organ transplants. COVID vaccination is recommended at least 2 weeks prior to lung, heart, kidney, and liver transplants for the simple reason that patients with lung, heart, kidney, and liver transplants are at higher risk of contracting and dying from COVID infection. And when a patient dies, the organ dies too, perhaps along with the scores of other patients who could have received that organ but were not lucky enough. Is it possible that a non-COVID vaccinated patient might present in need of an organ transplant? Absolutely. Might it be that they choose to not get vaccinated, even in light of the fact that clinical recommendations show that they should? Certainly, and that's their right. That's what patient autonomy is. But should transplant teams be precluded from taking that choice into account with many other factors, not as an absolute? I think that's a fallacy that we're entertaining with this bill here. It's never just an absolute, but as a relative contraindication for organ transplantation. Let me just ask this in a slightly different way. Should a transplant team be forced to ignore that a patient with alcoholic liver failure refuses to stop drinking prior to receiving the rare commodity of a liver transplant? Think about it. You're making this decision, okay? Should a transplant team not take into account that a lung transplant patient refuses to quit smoking? Should a patient who continues to abuse IV drugs be considered as good a prospect for long-term survival after a heart transplant as a patient who abstains? We love to talk about personal responsibility in this building. With some exceptions, some legislated by this very body, patients have the autonomy to decide what happens to their own bodies. But we cannot ignore medical best practices in service of these choices. And we cannot legislate away medical professionals' ability to practice according to these standards of care. Now, just to move on to the second broader harms of this bill, which I believe some of our colleagues are also going to cover. Real talk now, just among friends, okay? We're all friends here. I recognize that bills like this may ultimately be a messaging piece in an election season, okay? Just real talk. But remember that the messaging itself has the potential to inflict real harm, because we've seen, over the past 4 years especially, the corrosive messaging around public health and vaccines can do a tremendous amount of harm. And we've seen the way that doubt and cynicism and misinformation and undermining the confidence of public health institutions has caused cracks in the foundational elements keeping our society safe and indeed free. We have a responsibility in this body. What we say here matters. How we vote here matters. What we legitimize in our discourse, what issues we focus on in this chamber, what we write into law matters, because for good or for bad, mostly for good, sometimes for bad, people are listening to what we say. This bill undermines public trust in the COVID vaccine. Full stop. Whether explicitly or not, it gives oxygen to the idea that people should be skeptical of the demonstrated safety and efficacy of a vital health tool that here in the state of Georgia is still vastly underutilized. And especially this season when we've seen so many of our members out sick with a variety of infectious diseases, a bill seeking to undermine the uptake of a proven and effective vaccines, not just wrong-headed, but, dare I say, insensitive. This body needs to stop legislating the practice of medicine. And now, while I know I don't have to, I do feel it's my responsibility to take some questions. Are there any questions?
The lady has a question. Representative Buckner to your left has a question. Representative Buckner is recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the lady yield?
Absolutely, for my friend.
This is just for my information, I guess, but if someone were to be considered for a liver transplant, aren't they usually checked and strongly encouraged that they've had hepatitis vaccines?
Absolutely. There actually, if you want the full article, there's a full list of the recommended vaccines for each type of organ transplant. And certainly all the standard set of early childhood vaccines are usually on that list. And they usually recommend that you finish your vaccination schedule at least 2 weeks before the transplant because the body might not respond as well to the vaccine afterwards.
Does the lady further yield?
Yes.
Is it not true that probably one of the most rare organs that are transplanted and that we have the fewest of are lungs and lung tissue?
That is absolutely true for a couple of reasons. One is that when a patient arrests or codes, lungs are often the most delicate in terms of the resuscitation attempts. So often, even in patients who do sign up to be organ transplants, when we go in and take a look at those lungs prior to what we call an organ harvest, the lungs are damaged in the course of that resuscitation. So lungs are indeed one of the most scarce resources when it comes to organ transplants. And lungs are also, as we know, the organ that is targeted by the COVID virus.
Thank you. I guess I'm thinking that the way I read this bill is that this would be kind of like a definite, there's no flexibility for doctors to say, well, maybe they could have it or maybe not. It's like it's not going to be required at all. Is that the way I read it?
That is correct. There are several absolute contraindications to receiving an organ transplant. For one, if it's the wrong blood type, that's a no-go, right? But a lot of other considerations, including age, certain types of vaccine status, are relative contraindications. So in weighing, let's say, a panel of 30 patients who could all receive this organ, we look at that full panel and see who is optimized to have the best possible result. And it's a hard choice, right? Because it is a very scarce resource, and a lot of patients do die on that waiting list.
Thank you very much.
Lady, yield for another question.
Absolutely.
Representative Maynard to your right. Representative Maynard is recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Do you yield?
Absolutely.
Thank you for presenting. My question to you is multifold. There are parents that homeschool their children. There are parents that, for religious reasons, do not vaccinate their children, not just COVID, but many other things. So there are people that don't do vaccinations. Even myself, I got the COVID vaccine the first time and the second time, but when it said do it a third time, I made a personal decision that's a little bit too much vaccine in my body and in my children's body. My question is, since people have religious reasons why they don't vaccinate or just preferences, what do you say to that?
Representative Maynard, I think you bring up a great point about patient autonomy. And what you're saying actually illustrates the very phenomenon of patient autonomy, is that patients can decide what they want to do with their own bodies. And certainly the choice to not vaccinate your children or yourselves is a choice that you can make, right? So I fully respect the types of religious preclusions or just personal options that people exercise when making these decisions. However, what we're talking about is prioritizing the medical criteria used to make this allocation of a very scarce resource given that many people do need this resource. So what I guess I'm saying is that you can choose to not vaccinate yourself or your children, or you can choose to continue smoking, or you can choose to continue drinking. But that does not preclude the medical team from making that choice and that triage and assessment of who is the best recipient from an outcome standpoint for that very rare organ commodity.
And do you further yield just one more question?
Yes, I do.
And so for a child whose family chose not to vaccinate and they are in dire need of a transplant and the doctor has deemed them to be healthy and able to receive the transplant, what do you say to that? And that's my last question.
Again, I note that these recommendations, and I put that up there just to show it is a recommendation, not an absolute preclusion, that if that child is the best person to receive that organ transplant, that there is no other patient who would do as well, who maybe is as acutely ill, who is the right haplotype match for that organ, that child may well receive that organ, right? But it certainly should not be a factor that is taken out of the medical consideration for allocating a patient with the best outcomes possible.
Lady Yield for another question.
Yes.
Chairman Newton, to your right, has a question.
Uh-oh.
Will the gentlelady yield?
I do.
I thank you for your interest in this. I know you mentioned patient autonomy, which is, of course, a core principle of all health care, informed consent. Isn't it true that there's nothing in this bill that would preclude a patient who needs an organ transplant from having an in-depth discussion with their own physician or team of physicians who maybe looked at their previous COVID infection and the fact that they have antibodies but maybe didn't have a vaccination to make that decision? And this would just allow that patient an equal treatment as if somebody who had never had COVID but had got the vaccine. This would just allow them both to be treated equally without discrimination against one because they had natural immunity instead of a vaccine immunity. Isn't that true?
I think the good doctor brings up a good point, is that there are many factors that we take into consideration when evaluating the appropriateness of a patient getting an organ transplant. And I would argue that the criteria you bring up are actually being used right now. We always do informed consent for patients. We will tell them what the recommendations are to optimize a patient to receive an organ transplant. I don't think what you describe is actually tremendously different from our approach right now. What this bill, the narrative that this bill frames is that there is an absolute contraindication for some patients to receive an organ transplant without the COVID vaccine. I don't believe that is the case, right? So part of it is that this bill is presenting a scenario that does not exist. It is creating a problem that does not exist in real life. I believe actually in the Health Committee in which this bill was presented, a representative from Emory, which was cited as sort of the nidus for this bill being drafted, denied that this actually is a criteria, at least at Emory, for preclusion for organ transplant. But it does create a narrative in which COVID vaccine is presented as an absolute contraindication, which it is not, and undermines trust in the COVID vaccine, as you would have heard in the other people coming to testify in favor of the bill. And I think you were in that committee also. Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am. You do have several other questions. Let's see. The couple of them that have been here for a while. The gentleman from the 17th, Representative Montahan, is recognized in the back to your right. Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the lady yield?
I do.
Isn't it true that on February 1st of 2024, the CDC put out a new article called The Early Estimates of the Monovalent COVID-19 Vaccine, showing that the vaccine was only 49% effective?
I assume the gentleman has the article pulled up in front of him. I do not.
Isn't it further true, if the gentlelady yields,
Yeah, I do.
that it typically takes over a decade for new vaccines to be generated and put out into public use? Isn't that true?
What I will say about the development of the COVID vaccine is that while it may seem that it was developed very quickly, and certainly many, many people were working on developing that vaccine prior to its release, the technology behind it, and in developing that form of the mRNA vaccine, which is new and sounds scary to some people, had actually been in the works for several decades prior to that vaccine being developed. And it just happened that at that time, that form of technology was ready to be rolled out for the COVID vaccine. So I disagree with the premise of your question.
But typically, new
Is that a question?
Yes, it is. Does the gentlelady further yield?
I do.
Well, isn't it further true that given its short time frame and its less effective than is effective status as a vaccine, that we shouldn't be removing people from the ability to get a transplant based on such low efficacy numbers?
I don't know that I totally understand the question, but I will say that I have had a lot of patients come up to me with similar questions regarding the speed of the vaccine development and its efficacy and so forth. What we have to understand, first of all, is that if we are using prior precedent to other vaccine development, we have to remember that, first of all, that mRNA vaccine development took place over several decades, and that the COVID pandemic was an unprecedented event, right? So we had, unusually so, many, many different companies working together to solve this one problem, right? So that explains some of the speed that has incited some distrust and concern among some patients. With respect to the efficacy of the vaccine, I think it has been demonstrated to be efficacious, and it is one in a long string of layered strategies that we use in public health to minimize and mitigate the effect of COVID vaccines, or sorry, of COVID infection in our community. Thank you for your questions.
The lady has numerous other questions, and we have two other speakers.
I know we do have other speakers also, so maybe I'll take one more and then yield to my colleagues.
Sounds like a good plan. Representative Angela Moore is recognized for a question to your left.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentlelady yield?
I do.
Is it not true that in talking about this particular bill, that we're not talking about diseases, but more viruses, which is what the vaccination would entail? Viruses, not diseases. Even though kidney disease is a disease, but we're talking about the vaccines. Is that true?
Yes, many of the vaccines that are on this recommendation list protect against viral infections, including the measles, mumps, rubella, many other types of viruses.
Thank you.
All right, and I will yield the well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Good discussion. Lady has yielded well. Representative Nullowitz is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I rise before you today to share my concerns with HB 576. When I learned about this legislation, I went back and I watched the committee meeting where the bill was heard. It was not a very long meeting. It's about the right length, kind of meeting you watch when you're folding laundry, because I know I'm not the only person here who folds laundry while they catch up on committee meetings. I agree that preventing discrimination with regards to organ transplants is a valid policy concern. What concerns me about this bill, though, is that during the hearing it was clear that this legislation is a solution in search of a problem. This was clarified during the hearing that no patient in Georgia has been denied a transplant on the basis of their COVID vaccination status. The hearing made it clear that this bill is little more than a vehicle for false and dangerous narratives that further perpetuate vaccine hesitancy. And vaccine hesitancy is something that should deeply concern us all. In Georgia, the data is clear that our vaccination rates are declining. This is the case in Cobb County, where I live. We just heard this at a delegation meeting on Friday. This is the case in most counties in Georgia. What's even more frightening is that in Georgia, we have had occurrences of diseases, of lethal diseases, that are completely preventable with vaccines, preventable diseases like measles. There were 2 new cases in Georgia that we know of last month. Preventable diseases like pertussis, whooping cough, There were 8 cases in Georgia last month. And let me be clear, these aren't harmless childhood illnesses, right? Thinking that these are harmless childhood illnesses is an illusion that is afforded to us by the fact that we have these life-saving miraculous vaccines. These are lethal diseases that kill babies. These are lethal diseases. Pertussis will literally take your baby's breath away. These are lethal diseases like measles that will cause a pregnant woman to miscarry. We're seeing this increasingly often. It's not limited to vaccines. A lawmaker will hear a concern, maybe a constituent will call them, maybe they'll see it on social media. Again, they're not limited to vaccines, not limited to public health. They'll hear a concern that's based on a rumor. Somebody might have heard it from someone they trust. Maybe it's rooted in someone's political agenda. And instead of responding with facts, with the reality of the situation, instead we take it upon ourselves to present legislation to address the fear. In this case, it's the premise that people are worried that the COVID vaccines might be harmful. They're not. That the vaccines might be, and this came up in the hearing, the vaccines might be, quote, experimental. They're not. This is well established. And the concern that someone in Georgia was denied a life-saving transplant based solely on their COVID vaccine status. This did not happen. If we have a preschool child and they come to us and they share their fear, their certainty that there is a monster under their bed, maybe someone who they trust and respect told them there was a monster under their bed. Maybe it was their big sister. Maybe it was the middle schooler who lives next door. They're like, yeah, there's totally a monster under your bed. Do we respond to that child's concern by telling that sweet child, gosh, you might be onto something. Maybe there is something sinister to that shadow you saw when you lifted up that dust ruffle. Maybe we need to pass a law to make sure that monster doesn't gobble you up in the night. I guess as a parent, if you don't ever value sleeping another uninterrupted night, that could be your approach. But I would guess that most of us would instead take the approach of shining light on the situation. We would call those dust bunnies out for what they are. We need to do better. All of us need to do better. We are obligated to help Georgia face fear, whatever those fears might be, with facts. We shine the light on the dust bunnies. We show people they're not a monster trying to gobble them up. It's just some lint. Unfortunately, my concern is that HB 576 only serves to validate flawed beliefs and perpetuate mistrust in vaccines. And the reality is that the lethal perils that result from a continued decline in vaccinated Georgians from this vaccine hesitancy, unlike that monster under your kid's bed, it's terrifyingly real. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. Representative Jasmine Clark is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise in opposition to House Bill 576 because it's a dangerous bill that have an effect of wasting a very scarce yet life-saving resource in exchange for politics. Now, I actually believe there are people here who read this bill and truly believe that this bill addresses medical discrimination. And I can understand that, as there are actual and definite examples of medical discrimination in our society, and those should be addressed. But the guidelines that dictate who is eligible for an organ transplant are actually based on the fact that we do not have an unlimited stockpile of organs waiting for a body to be transplanted into. That's not how organ transplantation works. Instead, there are over 100,000 people waiting for an organ transplant. Over 100,000 people who are sitting on a list and they're hoping to get that phone call that they found a match and that they can come in and get their organ. And while they are waiting, 17 people per day per day, y'all. 17 people per day will die waiting on that list. So when we give an organ to someone, we want to make sure that it goes to someone who will take all the necessary precautions to live a healthy life. We want the best outcomes for that organ, because once we give it to them, we can't give it to someone else. If they pass away, if they get a preventable disease, we cannot now take that same organ and give it to someone else who's on the waiting list. That organ dies with them. Also, as many of you know, I teach anatomy and physiology, so I can't turn down an opportunity to educate in moments like these. There's an actual reason why we require people to be up to date on certain vaccines in order to be eligible to receive a transplant. So let me give you a real quick crash course in immunology. So everyone knows, if you look at your fingers, everyone knows that fingerprints are unique to us. That's why we use it oftentimes to identify us. But did you know that inside of your body, we also have an internal fingerprint? Our organs have certain markers on them that make them our organs. And so we have this so that our immune system, which is responsible for fighting against things that should not be in our body, doesn't attack our own body. This immune system also attacks things like bacteria and viruses that get into our body when they shouldn't be there. And vaccines actually help our immune system by giving the immune system the information that it needs to fight against these germs so that they can't destroy our bodies. This is the reason why people don't die or become severely or permanently ill from certain preventable diseases. So our immune system is really good at attacking things that don't belong. And it also notices when an organ comes from another source and it actually believes that that organ does not belong. So because it notices that the fingerprint on that transplanted organ doesn't match the fingerprint on all the rest of the organs in your body, the immune system will try to attack it. This is referred to as organ rejection. So to prevent organ rejection, transplant patients must take something called immunosuppressants. Basically, we have to dampen their immune system so the immune system doesn't attack the very thing that we transplanted into our body to save our life. These immunosuppressants are stopping us from attacking that transplant, but at the same time, it now makes it harder for us to fight off the infections that most people can walk around and never even know they came in contact with. So the best way to be able to fight these germs is to be up to date on all vaccines before you get the organ transplant. This increases your likelihood of living a nice, healthy life with that organ that has given you a second lease on life. So this guideline for requiring certain vaccines prior to organ transplantation is not mean-spirited at all. This guideline is to make sure that the gift of a transplant is a gift that many will never, unfortunately, get an opportunity to receive, and many will unfortunately die waiting for this gift. We want to make sure that this gift will be used for as long as it could based on the factors that we can control. Listen, the COVID-19 vaccine is not the monster under the bed that it is being made out to be. And I have to bring this up because it came up in committee. The COVID-19 pandemic did happen. It was not a figment of our imagination. And many of us lost loved ones or community members due to this deadly virus. And that should not be ignored. So I cannot go on without at least saying that the pandemic happened, it was real. Vaccines in general are not the boogeymen that they are being made out to be by some that have nefarious intentions. Vaccines like and alongside organ transplants, save lives. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Lady has yielded the well. Leader F. Strachan is recognized to speak to the bill.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this issue, as can sometimes happen here at the Capitol, is being described here, I'd submit, as something very different than what the bill is about. So if you review the legislation and you hear from the member who asked a question earlier, who described a constituent, a Georgian, who was seeking a kidney transplant and was not able for consideration because, or would not be able to be considered to receive it because of the vaccine status. And why did that Georgian not have the vaccine? It's because of pre-existing conditions. Was determined with that Georgian's doctor that that would not be best for that patient. So just think about that. Think about you being in need of an organ transplant, and with your discussions with your doctor, it's not best for you to get the vaccine, but then you are prevented from being considered for a transplant on that basis. Two terrible options before you to make. And this bill is not about the issue that's being argued here in this well. The bill is about, should that patient be solely prevented from getting the transplant, solely thrown off the list based upon vaccine status for this vaccine? I'd draw your attention to line 81 of the bill. And you see existing law. Existing law is you cannot be prevented from getting an organ transplant solely based upon disability, as defined by the Americans with Disability Act. That's existing law already. So this whole discussion about, is this patient best suited, and organs are so precious, and we have to, existing law says you cannot discriminate against disability. And what we're saying here is you cannot discriminate solely based upon vaccination status. So if there are other conditions, other things going on, pre-existing conditions, things that need to be taken into consideration by doctors, those can still be considered. But if the only basis to deny someone a life-saving organ is vaccine status, we're saying as a matter of public policy, that's unacceptable, because we're aware of Georgians like the one the representative described, who had no choice but to not get the vaccine. Described earlier about the narrative. Let's talk about the narrative around. This is not, furthering a narrative from this well is not addressing patient access, which is what we're talking about in this bill. This is about patient access and making sure that Georgians are able to get the health care that they need. It's not about other issues, and it's not to be blown, I'd submit, beyond the language that's in this legislation. Let's look at this bill. Georgians who are in difficult positions about needing organ transplant should not be discriminated against based upon vaccine status. And that being the sole consideration is going to prevent our constituents from getting the health care that we need. The bill is simple as that, and I'd urge your favorable consideration. Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to yield for a question.
You have a couple of questions, so let's have one from your counterpart. Representative James Beverly is recognized for a question. Mr. Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Leader, to you.
Yes, sir.
Several questions. How many conditions exist that would prevent someone from receiving an organ transplant? How many different ways in which a doctor says, hey, you can't get this transplant?
There are many considerations that are given as to the fitness for a patient to receive an organ transplant. I think that wide consideration is appropriate. You should not be limited from receiving an organ solely based upon one condition, which is exactly what this bill seeks to prevent.
Thank you. Thank you. The gentleman yield as well.
Yes, sir. I'd be happy to.
Are you familiar with HIPAA and what the compliance for HIPAA means? Could you explain to everyone else what HIPAA means so that we're on the same page and we're singing from the same sheet of music before I ask my subsequent question?
Sure. So it's difficult for me to anticipate maybe what specific aspect you're asking about, but my basic knowledge of HIPAA is its privacy with respect to medical records, and that's federal law.
Thank you, thank you. And so what I would say and what I would suggest to the General Assembly, and my question to you would be this: are we absolutely sure, based on the gentleman's testimony, that the sole reason why this person was not given an organ was because of this? Because if we're going to comply with HIPAA, that person does not have to disclose what exactly could have happened which prevented them from receiving an organ. Could that not be the case?
So first of all, answer it in two parts. First of all, I don't know the specifics of how information is received, but it would be my expectation with medical history and information that physicians need to make their determinations, they're not prevented from receiving information necessary for privacy issues. But I will say that I think the specific issue that was raised presents a very important consideration for us to take here. That if there are a variety of conditions being considered, which I heard the member in the well previously speak to, and the importance of making these determinations, one sole single factor should not be used as the basis to, as a matter of policy, refuse that patient's access to life-saving organs.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. And the last thing, just as a follow-up to what you just said, from our understanding, just based on our learned scholars and the folk who are in the well, is that there's a litany of things that have to happen for someone is precluded from getting an organ. That litany of things were not explained to us, and we don't know, quite frankly, if that was explained to the patient who actually was denied. What we can only assume is that that person was denied for one sole reason. But the scholars who stood in that well said, that's not how it works. So we have a solution looking for a problem, which may or may not have existed because we would never know what happens based on HIPAA.
So to the leader, I would just respond that in the Rules Committee, where this bill was presented by the sponsor, it was my understanding that this is an issue currently, that there is a current policy, at least by one of the providers in this area, that if there is if a patient is unable to provide proof of vaccination, that patient would then be prevented from being considered for an organ transplant on that sole basis. So this is an existing problem, and this bill will fix it.
Thanks, Leader.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, yield for another question.
Yes, sir. I'll take one more.
Yeah, okay. Well, you and your seatmate could have figured this out, but I'll recognize Whip Burchett for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that a person can be unvaccinated and donate organs?
Yes, sir. That's my understanding. I'm not an expert on the process, but a lack of vaccination record does not prevent a donor's organs from being received and utilized.
So you can give your organs away, but you can be unvaccinated, but you cannot receive organs if you need them based on your vaccination status currently in the state law.
That is my understanding, and
All right.
I would just go back to this issue is really about access for those who need life-saving organs. Should they be prevented from getting what they need solely based upon vaccination status, which may not have even been a choice to them, as we heard from the member earlier. Mr. Speaker, with that, I'd urge the members' favorable consideration, and I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. That completes the discussion, a very robust discussion. Thank you, members, on both sides of the issue for your questions and your input on this very important subject. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? For what purpose does Representative Gullett rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true that I currently have a COVID vaccination?
I'm sure it is if the gentleman so speaks.
Further parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it also true when you, not only did we state that the American Journal of Transplantation says that 36% require a vaccination before transplant, if you just Google it and you look at news articles, CNN, not my favorite news source, has an article says more organ transplant centers require patients to get COVID-19 vaccine or get bumped down the wait list. Isn't that true?
I'm sure that sounds like the gentleman's convinced that is true. For what purpose does Whip Park rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it not true that the politicization of health care like this bill is why Georgia is last in health care in this state, or in this country?
I'm sure the gentleman understands his facts. I've known him to do just that. For what purpose does Representative Lisa Campbell rise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that, which is different than what previous representatives have shared, that on lines 89 and lines 90 of this bill does delete a qualified recipient from the language of consideration for organ transplants, making line earlier 61 invalid. And so that in fact this does become an exclusive part of that review and consideration process.
I'm sure the lady is a diligent reader of legislation and she knows of what she speaks. For what purpose does Representative Moore rise?
Parliamentary inquiry. Thank you, Mr.
State
Speaker.
your inquiry.
Isn't it true that the majority of people of color are already on a list that is not priority here in the state of Georgia for transplantation?
I'm sure the lady believes what she states.
Also,
Is there a further inquiry here?
yes, thank you. Isn't it also true that my son has had a transplant, kidney transplant, that was rejected here in the state of Georgia?
I'm sure the lady knows what she speaks. I'm going to take one more parliamentary inquiry. We've certainly have a lot of facts out here for us to decide on. For what purpose does Chairman Corbett rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not true without the passage of this bill. If my granddaughter, who did not take the vaccine, she was 5 years old at the time, needed a transplant, they could possibly deny her that transplant if I wanted to give her a kidney. Is that not true?
I'm sure the gentleman has read this bill thoroughly and believes of what he speaks. All members voted. Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bill, House Bill 576, the yeas are 98, the nays are 71. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Thank you, members, for your participation. We're going to recess for lunch, but a couple of announcements that will impact our afternoon need to be made. I'm going to recognize Chairman Corbett if you'll make your way to the well. I'll also let you know, any of you that have pages, we will take page photos as soon as we recess for lunch. Pages will come up front. Your members join your page and we'll take photos. Chairman Corbett is recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Motor Vehicles Committee will be meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning, room 606, CLOB. Thank you.
Leader Estration is recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Upon the break, there will be a committee chairman's lunch in room 403 of the Capitol. 403 of the Capitol. Thank you.
Representative Tran is recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The CAB delegation, we do have a meeting today upon adjournment. The CAB delegation, we do have a meeting today in room 514. Your mayors may be in this meeting, so I suggest you attend. At lunch, upon recess. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
He was trying to confuse you. Good job. Representative Martinez, recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Upon adjournment here, Georgia Ports, they have a box lunch, lunch and learn in room 216. Thank you.
Representative Jasmine Clark is recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of GLBC, there will be an executive board meeting at 3 o'clock p.m. and a general members meeting at 4 o'clock p.m. today. Both will be on Zoom. Thank you.
Chair Lady Houston is recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have an Economic Development Appropriations meeting that was scheduled for 1. We are going to have to reschedule. I'm sorry, but we're just going to have to reschedule. Thank you.
We do have some important issues that we need to take up this afternoon. Chairman Petrie is recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House Human Relations and Aging Committee, we're going to meet at 2 o'clock in 406 CLOB. We have a very important measure to take up today that will allow the department to provide a new way of serving seniors in our community to avoid institutionalization. Thank you.
Representative Gamble, do you need to make your announcement now or thank you. Chairman Alan Powell is recognized for an announcement.
Members of Regulated Industries, the meeting that we have at 2 o'clock, because we'll be coming in after lunch, will be moved to 30 minutes after adjournment.
That completes our announcements. Members, we will recess until 1:30 p.m., 1:30 p.m. sharp, 1:30 sharp, so we can get on with the day's business. With that, pages, we'll ask you to join your pages up front. This House will stand in recess until 1:30 p.m.